One of the subjects doing the rounds on YouTube at the moment is the wokeness of J.K. Rowling, or as we always used to call it, being politically aware. That I'm a huge fan of J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. Nah, just kidding. I've never read a single Harry Potter book, and I'm never likely to, and I couldn't give a rat's about J.K. Rowling. Well, as a writer anyway. But she's being criticised as very much a Johnny-come-lately, left progressivist, social justice warrior, and the basic shape of the criticism is along the lines that, to put it briefly, she's all talk in recent times about leftist political consciousness, but that simply none of this actually appears in the original works that made her famous and very wealthy. And she's been called out on that. I caught a video by somebody called Americana Prime, and he does an excellent job of eviscerating J.K. Rowling, and you should watch it. However, as good a critique as it was, by the time he was getting to the end of it, I realised that there are a number of things that he had failed to cover about this J.K. Rowling individual, which I think needs to be brought out. And the first thing, and the most basic thing, is her name. A century or so ago, a famous writer by the name of George Eliot was on the literary scene, and as most people probably realise, George Eliot was a woman. Now, I always assumed that she was a heroic authoress who had been directed by her publisher and handlers to adopt a male name in order to sell books. Now, I don't really know any of the history of this at all, but over the years I just came to accept that she had probably just decided that this was the best course of action in her own right. In expressing it this way, what I mean is that in terms of the culture we are and have been living in for some time, you tend to assume the feminist interpretation before you get around to grappling with what is the probable reality that we have been so brainwashed as to look at things that way. This was the idea that she was oppressed and victimised by the patriarchal culture and wasn't free to act of her own volition. Now, J.K. Rowling was born into a world where she didn't have to do that. An entirely feminised culture that expected women to boldly assert their independence and strength and all the rest of it. She would have got this from every direction, from the education system, entertainment, all the rest of it. So she can't fall back on that excuse. And yet she found it within herself at the beginning of her career as an authoress to use a genderless version of her name. Deliberately, she did that in order because she was writing books for boys, about boys. She did not want boys, her market, knowing that she was a female. What a brave feminist she is. Which kind of feeds into the current criticisms that she's being assailed with at the moment, as in she's a fraud. Now, in Americana Prime's video, he does make mention of the fact that she lives a very wealthy lifestyle in some mansion or other. I thought it was remiss of him to mention that, firstly, she would have multiple mansions where she could house many thousands, probably, of the refugee asylum seekers whose cause she vociferously champions, for one thing, which she doesn't. And that secondly, all of these mansions, no doubt, would be surrounded by big, high walls with lots of security, even though she hates Donald Trump. I mean, it's not like people just walk in off the street and invite themselves in like illegal immigrants to the United States. These are a few interesting points about J.K. Rowling. Not a major figure in my universe, but a very good exemplar of the worst excesses of self-serving and self-absorbed leftist culture. So long for now.